Can you never Trumpers please explain how it is Donald Trump's fault that Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy royally screwed up a very winnable election? How is it Trump's fault considering Trump was not on the ballot for the first time in years and was barely a factor in this election at all? Clearly, the post-Trump GOP and Republican establishment isn't working so well, but they won't tell you that. Stay tuned. What's up, guys? McConnell here. Be sure to like and subscribe. I'm still sick, so excuse the voice. I also woke up with this weird thing on my face. I don't even know what that is. This Louisiana swamp fever. It's no joke, but yeah, not the best night on Tuesday, huh? And regardless of how today's final results end up, there's no denying it was a massive underperformance for Republicans, to say the least. This we can agree on. But you are currently seeing so many bad faith actors in the GOP now blaming Trump for the lukewarm midterm results. They're saying this is a disqualifying moment for 2024. Simultaneously, they are pointing to Ron DeSantis' impressive 19 to 20 point victory, saying that's obvious proof that we need DeSantis 24. We will address that specific debate in a future video. For now, what I will say is that Ron's victory was indeed impressive. However, there's also an argument to be made in favor of Donald Trump pending last night's results, believe it or not. But before that, let's ask the question. Whose fault really was it on Tuesday? The national GOP and establishment media are all pointing fingers at Trump. But the truth is, they have nobody to blame but themselves. It was Kevin McCarthy's job to win the House. It was Mitch McConnell's job to win the Senate. And they fumbled the bag. Maybe they still end up winning, but we all agree it was a huge underperformance. And let me make it clear. The establishment got exactly what they wanted in this election, which is a post-Trump GOP, right? Donald Trump was not on the ballot. He was not the incumbent president. He was barely a factor at all. All he did this cycle was the occasional rally like every few weeks that Fox no longer airs, by the way. He's barely been on Fox News the last several months. He's not on Twitter anymore. So again, he was as much of a non-factor in the issues of this election as is humanly possible. So this really was the chance for all of the post-Trump GOP advocates to show us what a Republican Party without Trump could do. On top of that, they had one of the most favorable national environments in decades. So it should have been a massive red wave that was not held back by Trump and his ego, right? And somehow they failed. Badly. Again, all these Republican types were saying that it was Trump who was holding us back. He's too divisive. He's too toxic. He's too loud. Well, he was relatively quiet in this election. You said that's what we needed. And you lost. So I know people are saying DeSantis 24 because he won by 20. And that's not an illogical argument. I understand the premise. But the same could be said of Donald Trump. Last night is what happens when Donald Trump is not on the ballot and not in the picture. The GOP collapses. Turnout falls apart. Energy falls apart. The Republican Party proved that they are nothing without Trump. Don't believe me? Let's look at the Dr. Oz race. Those arrows you see are leftward shifts in comparison to the 2020 election. In other words, those are the places that Dr. Oz underperformed. What part of Pennsylvania does that look like to you? Does that look like the Philly suburbs where Trump's message is supposedly too toxic? Or does that look like the rural part of the state that Trump is popular in? This was a trend we saw all across the Midwest. In Michigan, in Wisconsin. Without Trump on the ballot, the GOP is nothing, especially in the Rust Belt. Now, I know what you're going to say, but these were Donald Trump's candidates. They were his endorsements. But were they really, though? How did Donald Trump do most of his endorsements this cycle? If you'll remember, he didn't really handpick most of the candidates like people are claiming. In most cases, He just chose the person who was already in the lead and was on track to win the primary anyway. And in most cases, he unfortunately chose the person who was already favored by the establishment, by McConnell, by McCarthy. For the record, we were highly critical of this. It was me, it was Red Eagle, it was only the people in this circle who were saying for months, through the whole primary season, that a lot of Trump's endorsements were lukewarm and outright bad. We, at the criticism of some of you, were highly critical of him endorsing candidates who were already leading instead of endorsing the true America First MAGA candidate. So we have been saying this. Where were you? Huh? Hindsight crowd? Huh? Monday morning quarterbacks? Where were you? Because I didn't hear anybody from the moderate wing criticizing a lot of the people they're now labeling bad candidates until now. Weren't you the ones telling harder MAGA people that they were loonies for wanting Kathy Barnett over Dr. Oz, as just one example? Point being, in a lot of these races, the Trump endorsement was basically just a sticker slapped on the guy who was already leading and in many cases already approved by the establishment. In most cases, it was not a revolutionary thing. Now, again, there are criticisms to be made of that endorsement process. Sure, I was making them before I had the option of hindsight, unlike most of you, but the criticism to be made of Trump wasn't that he endorsed the loony far-right America First candidates. It's that he endorsed the safe candidates who were already favored by the establishment and were too lukewarm and didn't have enough energy. Now, before the DeSantis crowd tries to vindicate themselves with that, do you really think Ron DeSantis would be better at that? Do you really believe that DeSantis, the established safe option for 2024, who is already more favored by the donor class, wouldn't also do Mitch McConnell's bidding? Give me a break. At least Trump has a shot of learning his lesson and going scorched earth in 2024. There is no chance that happens with DeSantis, okay? But back to our previous point, again, we'll do that video later. McConnell and McCarthy indeed got most of the guys they wanted. That's the truth. Kevin McCarthy, for instance, spent $10 million in the primary to work against America First Republicans like Anthony Sabatini and Joe Kent, which, first of all, that seems like a lot of wasted money that could have been spent in the general. Seems a little bit reckless. Seems like bad leadership. But, again, no one's going to call out McCarthy. It's all Trump's fault, right? And second of all, with that said, don't pretend like Kevin McCarthy didn't get most of the guys he wanted, because he did. And he spent way too much money trying to specifically engineer the slate of candidates that he would get. So stop pretending as if the Republican establishment just got totally overthrown and all these hardcore Trump candidates were on the ballot. That is not accurate. And regardless, at the end of the day, it is not Donald Trump's job to win the Congress. It is the job of Kevin McCarthy, Mitch McConnell, and Ronna McDaniel. All three of which, by the way, seemed very confident going into this. And they failed. That's the truth. They failed. The blame is on them. Yet you won't see them ever take responsibility, nor will you ever see mainstream conservative media call them out, because apparently the Trump derangement syndrome on the right is just as bad as it is on the left. Everything is the orange man's fault, right? Mitch McConnell screws up, it's Trump's fault. Apparently. Now, earlier in the video, I did say that most of Trump's picks really were the safe and establishment picks instead of the true MAGA picks. But there is one major large-scale exception to that, and that's in Arizona. In Arizona, across the board, Trump really did pick the true America Firsters over the establishment neocons in Kari Lake and Blake Masters. So that really was the true Trump rebellion against the Republican establishment. That was the risky move or whatever. Now, at the time of recording this, we don't know the results still because Arizona's vote counting process sucks. But considering most of the vote left is election day vote, and the election day vote has been breaking like 75 or more for Kari Lake so far, Kari seems like she's in prime position to win by a few points or so. Again, The supposedly loony radical one that was too Trumpian, right? Kari Lake, also one of the few candidates that campaigned as a really staunch conservative till the very end and didn't even pretend to be a moderate for the general election. She's about to win, probably, folks, okay? I'm not going to count my chickens before they hatch, but we'll see. We'll also see what happens with Blake Masters, who, for the record, I don't care whatever people say, he's not a bad candidate. He's actually an amazing candidate, okay? But anyways, he's not in bad shape right now himself. If Kari wins by about 3 to 4, then Blake should get in too. So we'll see what happens there, but I will say this. If Blake Masters does end up winning, who, by the way, probably had one of the most difficult races in this whole cycle, right? Because he had to unseat a fairly popular and fake moderate incumbent. He was not running against a stroke victim like John Fetterman, right? Mark Kelly was a difficult candidate to run against. So if he wins, there's literally no argument you can make against this video. Because let's also remember this too. Blake Masters is the candidate that Mitch McConnell did not like. Mitch McConnell refused to fund Blake Masters for the longest time, which is really funny and ironic because I see so many of you anti-Trumpers attacking Trump for not giving Blake enough money while just pretending as if McConnell hasn't been publicly boycotting Blake for months, right? Because as usual, it's still Orange Man bad in 2022, apparently. So again, we'll see, but I will say this. If Blake pulls it out, it becomes even more obvious than it already is. Sure, the problem is not Ron DeSantis, I'll give you that. But the problem isn't Donald Trump either. The problem is the Republican establishment. The problem is the McConnells and the McCarthys of the world. Here's the last thing I will say. I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback from ordinary Republican voters on this video. Believe me, I've seen your comments on social media already. And that's fine. But I want you to ask yourself this question, because I would venture to say that most of you probably are not the biggest fans of the Republican establishment either, at least you say you're not. So then ask yourself, why is the establishment rushing to throw Trump under the bus so fast? Why is establishment media all blaming Trump instead of the obvious and logical people like the Senate leader and the House Majority Leader? Okay, you can disagree. You can hate this video, leave a dislike, I don't care. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of angry comments. But ask yourself that question. And ask yourself why the Republican establishment is pushing these narratives and why you are falling, or at the very least, pushing the same anti-Trump narratives as the Republican establishment. 2016 much? Anyways, I'll probably do a part 2 or follow-up to this video because there's a lot more never-Trumper talking points following the election that we have to address. Believe me, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Specifically, a lot of the utter Monday morning quarterback behavior from some of these people. We got to talk about that in the next video. So leave a like if you want to see that. If this video does well, I'll definitely make another. So leave a like, smash that like button. If we get 10,000 million likes, then I'll make part 2. Okay? So get it there. Very realistic. All right, guys. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And until next time, Alpha Moves only. God bless. Peace.